everybody, I'm back from vacation. Sorry for the voice. I am a tad sick, but I'm about to get over it pretty soon. But Barcelona was so pretty and so much fun. But also, to the people of Barcelona who had their cute dogs walking around, you should have let me pet them. I only got to pet one dog my whole trip. But anyway, I'm back and ready to get back into Monster High. Also, some side note, it seems more info on the dolls and Laguna were released after I posted my first video. One I thought was interesting, where the staff of Monster High didn't want to change Laguna from blue to pink, and one where we got the prototype of Laguna, which, if you can't tell, is clearly a doctored photo and not an actual doll. I think my biggest issue is that the marketing team said she looked too scary, which makes me wonder what age they showed these pics to. Like, the Monster High kids themselves are 15, so I don't see a 9-year-old saying that this is scary. Like, they must be showing this to kids much, much younger, which kind of worries me because I know that everyone keeps saying that this is for a new audience, but I'm like, the dolls are in high school, like they're freshmen, so I don't understand what child or what group of children said that this right here is scary, because it's not. And also, the prototype isn't ugly. I keep seeing people say that it is, but I'm like, it's a prototype. It's not done. And what they've shown isn't even a model doll, like as you can see right here. I even re-sketched the prototype to fit better with what they have going on, and I truly believe that Blue Laguna would have worked if the color department didn't try to add pink to everything. I don't know if you've noticed, but nearly every doll has pink on them, but I'm excluding Draculaura because that makes sense. Also, from here on out, I don't want to hear that this version is just for kids or is for a new audience / demographic. Like kids aren't stupid, So the show shouldn't be so watered down and have the tone of Mickey Mouse's Playhouse. Also, new generation, seriously, kids are kids. There's nothing new about them than their birth year and what they might talk about. Like, kids don't change. Kids are kids. They like the same stupid stuff we like. That's the whole point. Okay, back to why we're here. G3 Frankie is cute. They're not ugly like some other doll. Like, I love that Mattel made Frankie non-binary, since G1 fans were the ones who basically made that connection. And I love the prosthetic leg. I think it's very smart, but that's about the only things I really like. Not to say that I hate everything, which I don't. I think my main issues for this recreation of Frankie is the colors and personality. I'm also not a fan of this schoolgirl uniform they've given them. Like, G1's outfit was a combination of gothic geek, but this is not it. It's just your average uniform. There's something about it that I do like because it does hint at Generation 1 with the sleeves and like the stitching on the sweater, but I don't know, it's just kind of plain and boring and not fashion. And and that's another thing, I'm not entirely sure if this brand of this new generation of doll is going to be a fashion doll line. Like, that doesn't seem to be their main criteria. As for the shoes, I have no problem with them. I understand where they're going with it, as not every girl wears heels. But for some reason, dolls never look good in tennis shoes. Trust me, I've had dolls that primarily wore tennis shoes, and they always looked really weird. I didn't like it as a kid. Plus, now that the dolls are no longer wearing heels, you can tell that without the height of the heels, they had to make the dolls' legs longer, giving them this weird, disproportionate look. Seeing these dolls in person really rocked my world because their proportions are insanely inaccurate. I understand a lot of dolls are disproportionate, but it makes sense when you have to put on clothes or put shoes on them and stuff like that. Because okay, it's a weird thing that doll makers have to do. They have to make the dolls smaller, so that way, because of all the stitching and the fabric of the clothes, will beef them up a little bit. So that's the point of the smaller dolls, and also to make it easier to swap clothes with dolls. However, the heel thing was also just to avoid the height issue that a lot of dolls have. So now that this generation no longer wears heels, you can see that they had to sculpt longer legs, and it just looks really weird. Anyway, there's nothing wrong with G3 Frankie other than color and lack of actual fashion. I also really miss the logo, earrings, and brooch since G1 Frankie was the original main character. It made sense for her to have those things, but now that Claudine is the main character, it would seem they aren't doing that anymore. Also, anyone else feel like G3 Frankie's personality is kind of weird? I mean, Frankie is just not as much fun as G1. I also don't get why they made Frankie the nerd of the group. That was technically Ghoulia's spot. Like, Frankie is smart, but most of what Frankie did with their smarts was create hoodooed and, like a few playsets had her doing home economics and stuff. Frankie was smart. It wasn't like they weren't smart. They are smart. It's just like they weren't the scientist type, if that makes any sense. It's almost like they gave G2 Frankie's sister's personality to G3 Frankie, which, I don't know, G2 was its own mess and horrors that I'm not really interested in talking about. Also, side note, I'm not sure about the doll's eye shape. It looks too much like something Cleo or Claudine's old eyes would have had. In the show, they have G3 Frankie's electricity powers on, max mode, which, okay, I get kids like powers, but when you have every character's powers on full max, it gets to be too much. Like G1 and G2 knew that. They only used their powers once or twice. They never used them every single second of the entire episode. They use them for quirky things, or they just use them as oh, this is a good idea. This might help. The main focus of Monster High, the movies, as well as some of the TV series, was just character interaction, character development. Their powers were just a plus, And I'm not excited about G3 just having everybody full on using their powers left and right, no breaks whatsoever. Anyway, on to the redesign. So for Frankie's redesign, I basically fused all 3 generations together while also adding my own twists. So since Frankie is 15 days old, I'd like to think Frankie isn't 100% aware of fashion trends or what looks good and just tries everything out, hence why only one eye has makeup on it. I'm also not a super big fan of the fact that nearly every character has the same straight long hair other than Claudine. So I gave Frankie a more chopped look, something that looks like they didn't know what they were doing at the time, but stuck with it, as we all do as teenagers. I also made sure to make Frankie as mismatched as possible, since they're stitched up of different parts. I also like to think that Frankie's parents used parts of their parts family, so not their adult parts, but if their adult parts had kids or whatever, and they're just perfect! Very morbid. Side note on Frankie's family. I think it would have been so cool to incorporate both the Steins and the Frankensteins. In case people aren't aware, Frankenstein is the monster, and Victor Frankenstein is the creator. I know one movie had Victor in it, but honestly, the timeline doesn't make much sense for Victor to be Frankie's grandpa. Maybe multiple grandpas later down the line, yeah, but not grandpa. So I think it would have been cool if Victor made Frank, the original Frankenstein, and then went on to have his own family to carry on the legacy of reanimation, while Frank, the monster, went on to build his family. Since if we went by the timeline of G1's movie, Frankie's parents would be 181 years old. I'm not entirely sure that Frankenstein's lived that long. There's not much lore on how these things work. But also, with this way of Frankie's family being, we could get a Victor Frankenstein cousin. That could be the nerd type that they've made G3 Frankie. You could have G3 Frankie being the fun, optimistic, that loves their friends, and have the electric, science-obsessed character, and fans can finally get a Victor Frankenstein doll. I have wanted a Victor Frankenstein doll forever, and it seems like they're never gonna do it. Where was I? Oh, yeah, Frankie's face. Okay, I've already said this, but I wish the Monster High characters looked more monstery, and since Frankie is a reanimated corpse, I don't think they would look as good as they do, so I gave Frankie a dead eye. Still works, just super milky. And a more lifeless blue eye. I also gave Frankie braces, since I learned the hard way, teeth don't stay fresh when dead. Don't ask. I don't want to explain it. I also gave Frankie blue-green and muted green skin, since, fun fact, Frankie technically could have been a form of green. since Universal technically doesn't own the rights to every hue of green in the color wheel. Like, they would have to be very specific about it, but you'd still have to go to court to fight it, so I get why Mattel didn't want to do that. But hey, Mattel is still able to make Generation 1 Frankie green, so there's some kind of deal going on. I also gave the blue parts of skin freckles to show that this is two different people's skin being sewn together. I also gave Frankie bolts. I just moved them to their wrist, for the added fact that, again, Frankie can no longer have bolts on their neck. As for Frankie's stitches, I like to think that their parents have very different stitch styles. So yeah, Frankie has two different stitch styles. Okay, for Frankie's outfit, I mixed G1 and G2's tops together since I really like G2's undershirt. I also made Frankie's sweater more worn out and ripped up to look more like a crop top. My idea for Frankie's outfit is that it's parts of an old school uniform Monster High used to have, since I like to think the Steins like to give hand-me-downs to each other. I also gave Frankie a half skirt, which is similar to G1 Frankie's dress, and pants, as I'm kind of tired of every character wearing skirts or shorts. No one's actually wearing pants, and the one character that used to wear pants is wearing a dress now. I would have liked to give Frankie a full pants look, but I didn't want to cover their prosthetic leg. And speaking of the leg, I find it weird how it's built. Like, the bolts make it seem like Frankie can't take it off, which, ow. So I reworked Frankie's leg to be more similar to an actual prosthetic leg, and made the bolts more for the knee joint, which the doll and character doesn't seem to have, which, again, ouch. I also added stickers and magnets that you can see better instead of the black Sharpie writing. I also put a non-binary sticker on Frankie's leg and painted one set of Frankie's nails, the flag colors as well. For Frankie's overall color, green and red just work better for Frankie, especially now that Frankie is no longer green. Like, instead of the blue and pink, they could have gone harder on green for their outfit, just to make up for the fact that Frankie's skin tone is no longer green. I mean, I know they're going in a completely different direction, but I hate that we've been kind of losing the original Gothic colors of each character, the thing that made them unique and interesting, which is why I also added green highlights to their hair, just again for another nod of the original green skin. As for the shoes, I kind of just mixed G1 and G3 shoes together, as I really want Frankie to be the tallest in and out of heels. Overall, my fashion choice for Frankie was a school grunge look, something I think works for a monster made up of other parts, as grunge style is also like that. Also for accessories, I made a backpack, but it was kind of hard to see with this pose, so here's the sketch. I also wanted to put keys on Frankie's chain, as I like to think that every Stein that ever went to Monster High kept keys to hidden rooms, something that would, be helpful instead of Frankie constantly using their powers. Like, Frankie could use leftover journals from their family, or, their cousin could be the one that's, knows all this stuff and is teaching Frankie, being their best buddy, But I kind of ran out of time for the keys, sorry. But, for future sketches that I will be making, the keys will be there. Honestly, I could sit here and talk about Frankie forever, but we'll be here all day. Though I will say Frankie should still be the main character. They're 15 days old, which works in showing the audience things as Frankie learns stuff, because we are learning along with Frankie. Like, everything that Frankie doesn't know, we don't know. So when someone explains something or we learn something, it's through Frankie that we're learning it. Like, Frankie is literally the perfect character to follow and learn things with. Claudine, not so much. And I'd actually like to talk about that real quick. I was able to watch the first episode, not the one on YouTube, the actual first episode. And let me just say, it's the most boring thing I've ever watched. Like, Hotel Transylvania was more fun than watching whatever this was. Okay, fully hear me out on this one. The dialogue was just not as great as it could be. Like, G1 Monster High was cringe. Yeah, no argument there. But the conversations actually felt like real people talking to each other. Like, you can tell that the voice talent behind G1 Monster High knew what they were doing when it came to the more emotional moments of the webisodes. But this one, No, the conversations between these characters just felt like people were just talking at each other and not actually having a real conversation whatsoever. And Claudine was probably the worst. Like, no hate towards the voice actress. It's like she's trying to give, like, Rainbow Dash meets Twilight, but it's just not working. Also, the jokes were really the worst when it came to Claudine. Like the, haha, I'm a clumsy dork who likes monsters, aka the I'm a weirdo meme. Like, the reason that specific thing worked for Frankie was because of the whole my body falls apart, so I can't control my clumsiness. I know clumsiness isn't a controlled thing, but the slapstick with Frankie worked way better than it does for Claudine. But yeah, like Claudine, I feel like she does that shit on purpose. Also, oh my god, Draculaura is so boring. Like, I get she's undead, but a little life in the performance, please. Cleo is a full-on mess. They really have no idea what to do with her. And I get we're all tired of the mean girl trope, but there's like nothing there. There's nothing. Anyway, next video might be later than usual as Viv has released the 3Vs and the poster is just a nightmare. I'm gonna have to redraw the whole thing just so you guys can see the designs. Anyway, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and me. And I hope you all have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!